Hi, thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations. We're on the front porch here at Copeland Community Center, and I want to welcome our visitors and our guests this morning, Pastor Frank and Candy Hall. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
We appreciate the opportunity.
I'm sure that at least for you, Pastor Hall, you're not needing an introduction to many people at the village because of your role at the church. Would you talk about that for a minute?
I came in April of 2018 as the interim minister of pastoral care. And on that first day, I had numerous people say, "I'm so glad you're here." And it hasn't stopped. There's been many people who have welcomed us to the village. Of course, initially, Candy kind of came and went. She was going back up to Lenore and coming back down, and so people had a hard time identifying her, but she finally came and we
stayed, huh?
Yeah, she came and stayed.
And I believe both of you you live together in Riverwoods, right?
Yes.
And what street are you on?
Meadowview.
Well, welcome to the village and our neighborhood at Riverwoods. How about sharing with us where you were born and where you grew up, Candy, and a little bit about your childhood memories?
Well, we're both native Floridians. I was born and raised in Panama City, and Frank was born and raised in Jacksonville. I have 4 siblings, and we're all involved in ministry, have been. Some of us are retired now, some of us are still active. But when I graduated from high school, I went to Chipola Junior College in Mariana, and then to the University of West Florida in Pensacola. I graduated with a degree in music education and taught music. I did teach for 1 year in Pensacola, and then I met Frank and we got married. I did not work again until after our youngest child started kindergarten. But I have taught music in schools. I worked in human resources at the hospital, and I've been involved in child care. I have raised 2 children that were not mine. And
Frank, you must
it's your turn.
The 2 children we raised were a boy that became a part of our family at the age of 2 months. His mother was working and needed child care, and Candy stepped in, and he is still very much a part of our lives. Matter of fact, we're going to soon be going back up to Lenore for his wedding. He's going to be getting married in a week or so, and I'm going to have the honor of performing the ceremony along with his uncle Joe Pritchett. His name is Jacob Pritchett. We claim him as our son. He did live with us for a few years after his mother died. So he came to live with us, and we're very proud of him, and as well as the other 2 sons as well. Christopher, who is our oldest, was born when I was pastoring the West Jacks Church in Jacksonville, and now he is pastoring the West Jacks Church in Jacksonville.
Oh my goodness.
And he and his wife Allison, who is the daughter of Karen and David Hall, have a very active life with 2 children, Natalie, who's 14, and Micah, who is 11.
Yeah.
It hardly seems possible that time has flown by fast enough for them to be that old, but they're both very active in sports. Natalie is very accomplished in her soccer, and Micah wants to be a NBA player. He's got a long way to go, but he's very good, but he's not very tall.
Well, I have done probably about 80 of these, or 80 people have been interviewed, And I think you two are the fifth native-born Floridians. I'm one of them. And so it's nice to have a Floridian on the porch with me. And where were you born in Jacksonville?
I was born in St. Vincent's Hospital.
Me too.
That same hospital our son Christopher was born in, and the same hospital Micah, our grandson, was born in. So we've got a tie to St. Vincent's. And I was raised in the Murray Hill area of Jacksonville, which is not terribly far from St. Vincent's. But went to Ruth and Upson Elementary School and John Gorey Junior High School and Robert E. Lee High School. Just had a very positive growing up. I enjoyed being raised in Jacksonville at a different time than today.
Right.
When I was raised in Jacksonville, I actually got on a city bus and took myself to a doctor's appointment in downtown Jacksonville. You wouldn't dare do that
Or you wouldn't let
nowadays.
your child do that for sure.
No,
No.
no.
Well, I grew up in Green Cove Springs.
Oh,
so
okay.
I didn't grow up in Jacksonville, but that was like my hometown.
Green Cove Springs is where my mother and father were married.
Oh my goodness.
They, I don't know the details of it. I just know that's where the marriage license says they were married.
What about a special childhood memory for each of you?
Well, I remember a lot of our entertainment we did ourselves.
Uh-huh.
We definitely did not spend all day in the house. We were outside most of the day playing. My mother is very creative, very crafty. She invented things for us to play with, or she built things. She built swing sets or different forts and things for us to play in. She always was full of ideas, and I was always very appreciative of the fact that she did. We were not just, it was not just us that were playing. The neighborhood kids were always at our house too. My mother probably had the influence on a lot of other children besides us in the raising because they were there so much.
I remember my neighborhood. It was a neighborhood that everybody knew each other, and there was plenty of children to play together, and we too played outside a lot. Riding a bicycle was one of the things that I did. I rode bicycle around the neighborhood, and as long as I let my mother know where I was going and when I would be back, I really didn't have too many limitations on where I could ride. But as a young child, up until I actually started school to the third grade, I had a very severe speech impediment.
Wow.
People thought I was cute with the way I talked, but it was a struggle at times. And there's one girl that lived not directly behind us, but kind of cattywampus behind us, who understood everything I said. And it wasn't unusual for my mother to call, "Sharon, come tell me what Frank's saying." But praise the Lord, with speech therapy, I was able to get over that. And who knew that person with a real severe speech problem could become a pastor and actually preach sermons.
Well, I've heard you preach, and the Lord was good and blessed you in that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What about your education after high school, Frank?
I went to Aurora College when it was Aurora College. Of course, it's Aurora University. I went for the full 4 years and actually completed my degree in 4 years, which is something some people have a hard time doing. And at the end of my junior year, I didn't know if I was going to succeed, but I did. And when I completed my degree work at Aurora, I had a degree in sociology with a second major in theology. Yes, I value my time at Aurora. Matter of fact, last October, Candy and I went up there for the 50th anniversary of my graduation from Aurora, and I was able to speak at the memorial service for the reunion, which was a real honor and a blessing to be able to do that.
And where did the two of you meet?
We met at
I don't remember.
We actually met at Camp Swanee. After I graduated from college and I had taught for a year, when the summer following that year, we were both staff members at Camp Swanee. We met there. And
I always ask the husband after the wife tells the story, is that your side of the story too?
Well, I might embellish it a little bit. But
And did you grow up in the Advent Christian Church also?
I did. My mother and father were both very strong Christians. We were always we were raised in the church. As Frank was talking about his childhood, I was recalling the fact that we didn't have much when we were young. I didn't realize we were poor because our parents, we had what we needed, and we had the Lord. We went to church. Our grandparents went to church. Our aunts and uncles were all involved in church. And I didn't realize everybody didn't go to church. And one of the memories I have was, I distinctly remembered I was in the 3rd grade. And I was at school. And I was talking to a little girl. It must have been a Monday because she said something about playing yesterday morning. I said, "You mean after church?" And she said, "No." And I said, "You didn't go to church?" She said, "No." And I thought, well, why not? Everybody goes to church. Because my sphere of living, everything that revolved around me, everybody that revolved around me went to church, and I thought that everybody did. But we were very secure. We did, like I said, materially we didn't have much, but we were secure. We were loved. We knew that we were going to be taken care of, I guess. We were happy.
Well, one of my other interesting things that I found in interviewing members here, that you're not the only couple that have other grandparents, that you share grandchildren that live here together. The Halls live here, and there are quite several other couples. And so that's been a surprise to me. I didn't grow up in the Advent Christian Church. Grew up in the Episcopal Church. But the lifelong connection so many people have here at the village is just amazing.
Well, at Camp Swanee, like I said, Frank and I, when we met, we were staff members at Camp Swanee, but we both attended as campers. In fact, my mother attended Camp Swanee as a camper. She rode the train from Panama City over here to go to camp as a young person too. So our connection with Dowling Park and with Camp Swanee goes back a long way.
It does. Did you ever, in your earlier years of marriage, think that you would move here and retire here?
No.
No, I don't guess it was completely a foreign idea, but it wasn't something that we said we will do. Matter of fact, we had purchased a home in Lenore about 11 years ago that we thought was going to be our retirement home. And we were comfortable in Lenore, and just we were very much a part of the Lenore, North Carolina. But then the Lord had other plans, and I received a letter asking if I'd be interested in being the interim minister of pastoral care, and I asked Candy if she was okay with me saying, responding positively, not knowing which way that would go. Mm-hmm. And as you might say, the rest is history. When we came down here, we were very comfortable with the idea of living here, and as it turned out, Candy's mother actually is a resident at Good Sam now.
And I think you have another sibling in the area, is that right?
Yes, my sister Cheryl Gilroy lives here, so yeah, we do have connections there. But we, like Frank said, we thought that we were retiring in Lenore. He had pastored for 28 years at Tabernacle Levitt Christian Church in Lenore, so that was our home. I mean, we had our children there. Our other son, Brock, still lives in North Carolina. He's a executive director of the 911 Communications Center in Burke County, North Carolina. And they have 2 children, Emmeline and Finley, and are going to have another one. So our grandchildren are increasing. We're thrilled with that. And our son Jacob, who is going to be married, they'll be living in North Carolina. So we still have connections there, and we'll be going back there. So,
well, 28 years in one church is quite a long career, isn't it?
In 1991, when we moved to Lenore, I had no idea that we would be there as long as we were, and I actually retired there. Of course, I came out of retirement to come down here, but it was a good experience, good ministry. Just I was involved with the community initially through the Ministerial Association, which ultimately ceased, but and then I was a volunteer through hospice for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
28 years.
That's a wonderful ministry also.
Right.
After you graduated from Aurora, where were you till 1991? What did you do during that time?
You'll find if we go through those years until I settled in Lenore, the previous 10 years we were in Brunswick, Georgia. When we went to Brunswick, Georgia, we had been in a succession of 2-year pastorates. I always thought the grass was greener on the other side, I guess. But when I went to Brunswick, I said, we're going to settle here for a while. We're going to be here. And we had a good ministry in Brunswick, a very good ministry. During the time we were there, the county wanted to have the church property, which was right across the street from the old courthouse, to be a part of the plans for the new courthouse. So one day we saw in the paper, targeted for closure, and the picture above that caption was a picture of the church, but there was also a picture of the street sign. And when they said targeted for closure, of course we in the church thought they meant the church, and they did to a degree, but they actually meant the streets. The streets were going to be closing, and that led to a period of time of uncertainty concerning the location of the church, and we ultimately were able to physically move the sanctuary, which was and is a beautiful sanctuary that was built, I think it was in 1904, and adjoined it with an old furniture warehouse that we remodeled for a educational building. And just the church, instead of being pushed out of the courthouse scene, became a part of the total courthouse landscape. which through many hours of sweat and tears,
Right.
we succeeded in getting that done.
Oh, would you both share with us different volunteer work? Pastor Frank, you alluded to being a hospice chaplain volunteer. What other kinds of volunteer work have you done? And I know you probably haven't, since you've been at the village with the quarantine, gotten to volunteer, but what other areas of volunteer work have you done? And what would you like to do once things are a little different here at the village?
Well, in Lenore, I was very involved with the Community Music Club of Lenore, which was, I served on the board for that organization, which was very involved with raising money for scholarships for students who were wishing to go to college and major in music. I was involved with that for many years, sang in many community music productions, and of course was involved with the music at church. Directed the children's ministry at church for a long time too, which I thoroughly enjoyed with that.
As far as my volunteer work, I'll classify it as volunteer. Of course, it's an extension of ministry. I've spent many years in camp ministry. I've directed, I have been the evangelist for junior camp. I've taught various classes for camps. Just have thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of ministry. While we were in Georgia, I was the director of the Camp Georgiana for about 8 years. And then when we moved to North Carolina, I was invited back to Camp Georgiana to be the evangelist. And I have several series of stories that I tell at camp, or I have told, called Sunday School Charlie. And Sunday School Charlie can get into some real messes, and he always manages to get out.
Well, that sounds like the title for a new TV show that you should do for TV2. What about things that you would like to do now that you're living in this area and things on your bucket list?
Well, we definitely want to travel more than we have had the opportunity to travel. That was one of our plans when we retired, but
I bought a red pickup truck to pull a
we were going to buy
camper.
a camper and we were going to travel, but we're not retired anymore. we would like to do that though, and I will plan to volunteer in the village at some point when we get past the pandemic and things settle down some. So.
There's some of the things that's travel. We would like to experience the Ark experience in Kentucky. We were close enough to almost make that a day trip, at least no more than an overnight trip. Of course, now it will be a several day trip. But beyond that, there's national parks that we would like to visit at some point in time. I've been within 50 miles of the Grand Canyon, never seen the Grand Canyon.
I've only seen it from the air, and that's my,
Well, I have seen it from the air.
that's on my bucket list.
But it just looks like a hole in the ground from the air.
Has anything surprised you about actually becoming members and living at the village? About life here? Or?
I don't know that anything, I guess, surprised us. We've been pleased with the community, with the interaction, with the relationships within the village. I think it's very comfortable. It's a comfortable place to live. It's a safe place to live, I guess. I feel that, and thoroughly enjoying getting to know people and forming new relationships here.
Before the pandemic, one of the things I would do as part of my ministry would be to go over to the Lope and Gopher during a mealtime and go from table to table, and the camaraderie that was there among the residents. I'd also start at Riverview, and I'd go down to Riverview, and Willie would be putting a puzzle together, and I'd sit or stand there sharing with him and anybody else that might come out. And then I would leave Riverview and go through the catacombs to Dowling House and Carter House, and along the way there was people playing cards or whatever. I'd stop and share, and that kind of thing didn't surprise me, but it was very pleasing to see the relationships within the community. Now with the pandemic, some people are having a hard time with that. We don't have that freedom to meet and gather without thinking about social distancing and wearing a mask and that kind of thing. And I am looking forward to the day when we can discard the mask, not worry about social distancing, and just hug again.
That was exactly what I was going to say.
Shake hands again. And just in the past few days, I've had several people extend their hand for me to shake, and I'll confess there's times when I do, but there's other times when I feel like I need to let them know that we're still social distancing. We're still not free to have that kind of openness. But that time is coming.
That is.
We are going to be able to do that again. And in the meantime, we need to be patient. We need to be caring. We need to just connect with people the best ways that we can.
Well, that's a wonderful message to end on. Thank you both for joining us this morning. And thank you for joining us on TV2 watching. Hope you'll tune in again.